You were told to be quiet. You were told to sit still. You were told that children should be seen and not heard. And somewhere deep inside you, a small fire started burning. It never went out. That fire is still there. You feel it when someone dismisses you. You feel it when your boundaries get crossed. You feel it when you watch younger generations speak up for themselves with an ease you never had. And part of you feels proud of them. But another part, a quieter part, feels something else, something that burns. That burning is anger, and you have been carrying it for 50 years. Let's talk about where it came from. Let's talk about why it stayed. And let's talk about what it has cost you. You grew up in a world that did not ask how you felt. The adults in your life were not cruel, most of them. They were simply products of their own time. They believed that toughness was love. They believed that preparing you for a hard world meant being hard on you. Emotions were seen as weakness. Vulnerability was dangerous. So you learned very early to push everything down. When you were scared, you were told not to be ridiculous. When you were sad, you were told to stop crying before someone gave you something to cry about. When you were angry, you were punished. The message was clear. Your feelings were inconvenient. Your feelings were wrong. Your feelings were a problem to be solved, not an experience to be understood. So you did what any intelligent child would do. You adapted. You learned to hide. You built walls so strong that eventually you forgot they were there. You became so good at suppressing your emotions that you convinced yourself you did not have them. But emotions do not disappear just because we ignore them. They go underground. They wait. The anger you feel now, the anger that sometimes surprises you with its intensity, is not new. It is old. It is ancient. It is the accumulated rage of a child who was never allowed to be angry. Every time you swallowed your words, every time you accepted treatment you knew was unfair, every time you smiled when you wanted to scream, you added another layer to that anger. It grew quietly in the dark. Psychologists call this suppressed emotion. When feelings are not expressed, they do not simply evaporate. They get stored in the body and the mind. They shape our reactions, our relationships, our health. Studies have shown that chronic suppression of anger is linked to higher rates of heart disease, digestive problems, and depression. Your body has been keeping score all these years. But here is what makes your generation's anger particularly complex. You were not just taught to suppress it, you were taught to feel ashamed of it. Anger was not just inappropriate, it was a character flaw. Good children did not get angry. Good adults did not lose their temper. If you felt rage, there was something wrong with you, not with the situation that caused it. This created a painful double bind. You had every reason to be angry. Your boundaries were violated regularly. Your autonomy was not respected. Your voice did not matter. And yet you were made to feel that your anger was the problem, not the treatment, the response to the treatment. So you internalized it. You turned it inward, and anger that cannot go outward goes somewhere else. It becomes self-criticism. It becomes perfectionism. It becomes the relentless voice in your head that tells you that you are never good enough, that you should try harder, that you do not deserve rest or pleasure or peace. Some of you turned the anger into drive. You became high achievers. You worked harder than anyone around you. You built careers and raised families and kept everything running smoothly on the outside. But inside, the engine was always running hot. You pushed yourself because stopping felt dangerous. You achieved because achievement was the only acceptable outlet for all that fire. Others turned the anger into numbness. When an emotion becomes too painful to feel, the mind has ways of shutting it down. But emotions do not work like light switches. You cannot turn off just one. When you numb anger, you also numb joy. When you suppress rage, you also suppress passion. Many of you have spent decades feeling like something was missing, like life was happening behind glass, like you were going through the motions without really being present. And some of you turned the anger outward, but in indirect ways. You became sarcastic. You became passive-aggressive. You developed a sharp tongue that could wound without ever raising your voice. Because direct anger was forbidden, you found other ways to express it, ways that gave you deniability, ways that let you release some of the pressure without ever admitting you were angry at all. Let's talk about your parents for a moment. Not to blame them. They were doing what they knew. But to understand them is to understand yourself. Your parents likely grew up during times of genuine hardship, economic instability, wars, social upheaval. They learned that survival required toughness. They learned that emotions were a luxury they could not afford. And they passed those lessons on to you, believing they were giving you the tools you would need. But the world you inherited was different from the world they expected. The rules started changing. Gradually at first, then all at once. The emotional suppression that helped them survive became a burden for you. What protected them limited you. And here is where another layer of anger comes in. The anger at being caught between two worlds. You were raised with one set of rules and then watched those rules become obsolete. You suffered to meet standards that were then discarded. You did everything right according to the old playbook, and then the game changed. You toughened up like you were told, and then society decided that emotional intelligence mattered. You kept your head down and worked hard. And then you watched people succeed by self-promoting and networking. You sacrificed and delayed gratification. And then you saw others get rewarded for demanding what they wanted right now. Part of your anger is grief. Grief for the softness you never got to have. Grief for the childhood that required you to be small and quiet. Grief for the young person you were, who deserved so much more than they received. You watch your children or grandchildren now, and you see them being raised differently. You see them being asked how they feel. You see their emotions being validated. You see them being told that their voice matters. And this brings up complicated feelings. Of course you want better for them. Of course you are glad the world is changing. But part of you cannot help asking, what about me? Where was my validation? Where was my voice? Why did I have to suffer while they get to have it easier? This is not selfishness. This is a completely natural response. It is unfair. What happened to you was unfair. And acknowledging that unfairness is not weakness. It is honesty. The anger also shows up in your relationships. Perhaps you have noticed that you have a short fuse with certain people. Perhaps your spouse or your children have told you that you overreact sometimes, that your response does not match the situation. They are not wrong. But they are also not seeing the whole picture. When someone dismisses you now, they are not just dismissing you now. They are adding to 50 years of being dismissed. When someone interrupts you, they are joining a long line of people who did not think your words mattered. Your reactions are not just about the present moment. They are about the accumulated weight of a lifetime. This is what psychologists call triggering, though that word has been overused to the point of losing meaning. What it really means is that present situations activate past wounds. The nervous system does not distinguish between then and now. It responds to patterns. And when a pattern from your childhood reappears, your body and mind react as if you are back there. So your adult self gets angry at your partner for a dismissive comment. But the intensity of that anger belongs to the child who was never heard. Your adult self gets frustrated when your opinions are not valued at work. But that frustration carries the weight of years of being told that you did not know enough to have opinions. Understanding this does not make the anger wrong, but it does help explain why it sometimes feels disproportionate. You are not overreacting to the present. You are having a cumulative reaction to the past. Now let's talk about what you do with this, because awareness without action is just suffering with extra steps. First, you need to stop judging yourself for the anger. It makes sense. It is not a flaw in your character. It is a logical response to what you experienced. The shame you feel about your anger is actually part of the problem. It is one more layer of suppression, one more way of telling yourself that your emotions are wrong. Your anger is valid. Say that to yourself. Your anger is valid. You had reasons. You still have reasons. Feeling angry does not make you a bad person. It makes you a person who was hurt and never got to process it. Second, you need to understand that expressing anger is not the same as being destructive. You were raised to believe that anger was dangerous. that if you let it out, terrible things would happen. But there is a vast difference between feeling and expressing anger and losing control. You can be angry and still be kind. You can be angry and still be fair. You can express your anger without attacking anyone. You can say, "I feel angry about this," without becoming the monster you were always afraid you might be. Third, you might need to grieve. This is not a popular idea. Grief is usually associated with death. But you lost things too. You lost a childhood where your emotions were welcome. You lost years of feeling fully alive. You lost relationships that could not survive your walls. You lost parts of yourself that you buried so deep you forgot they existed. Grieving these losses is not self-pity. It is acknowledgement. It is saying, "This mattered. What happened to me mattered, and it affected me, and I am allowed to feel sad about that." Fourth, you may need to learn how to feel anger in your body. This sounds simple, but for many of you, it is revolutionary. You have been so disconnected from your physical experience of anger that you do not even recognize it until it explodes. Anger has physical signatures: tension in the jaw, heat in the chest, clenched fists, a racing heart. Learning to notice these sensations early gives you choices. You can respond before you react. You can express before you explode. Fifth, and this is perhaps the hardest, you may need to have some conversations. Not necessarily with the people who hurt you. Many of them are gone, or incapable of hearing you, or simply not worth the effort. But perhaps with the people in your life now. Your spouse might need to know that when they dismiss you, it hits harder than they realize. Your adult children might need to understand why you sometimes react intensely to small things. The people who love you deserve to know what you are carrying, not so they can fix it, but so they can understand. There is one more piece to this puzzle, and it might be the most important. Your anger is not just a wound, it is also information. It tells you where your boundaries are. It tells you what you value. It tells you when something is wrong. For 50 years, you have treated your anger as an enemy. But anger, properly understood, is a messenger. It says, "This matters to you." It says, "This is not okay." It says, "You deserve better than this." The tragedy is not that you have anger. The tragedy is that you were taught to see your anger as shameful rather than instructive. All these years, you have had an internal guidance system trying to help you, and you have been fighting against it. What if you could befriend your anger, not indulge it, not let it run wild, but listen to it, ask it what it needs. Use its energy not for destruction, but for change. The anger you have carried for 50 years is exhausting. It has cost you peace. It has cost you health. It has cost you presence and joy and connection. But it has also kept something alive in you. Some spark of knowing that you deserved more. Some refusal to fully accept the diminishment you experienced. That spark is precious. It is the part of you that never fully gave in. Never completely agreed that you did not matter. Never totally surrendered your sense of self. Your anger, strange as this sounds, has been protecting you. It has been saying underneath everything, "I am still here. I still matter. I still exist." The work now is not to kill that spark. It is to transform it. To take the energy that has been burning you from the inside and direct it toward the life you want for your remaining years. To stop turning it against yourself and start using it in your own service. You have spent 50 years carrying this. You have been so strong, stronger than anyone ever acknowledged. The fact that you are still here, still functioning, still caring for others, and showing up for life after everything you suppressed and endured is remarkable. But strength is not the same as peace, and you deserve peace, not someday, now. For however many years you have left, the anger does not have to go away completely. It is part of you, part of your history, part of what made you who you are. But it can become quieter. It can become less urgent. It can become a voice among many rather than the loudest voice in the room. You did not deserve what happened to you. You did not deserve to be silenced. You did not deserve to be made small, and you do not deserve to keep suffering for it now. 50 years is long enough. The fire can finally rest. If this resonated with you, if you felt something shift while listening, take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more people find these videos. Subscribe if you want to explore more of these topics together. And in the comments, tell me about your experience. What has your anger cost you? What has it protected? What would it feel like to finally let it rest? Your stories matter. Your voice matters. It always did.